This episode goes out to Dakota from Nebraska.
Hi there, Megan Robinson here. Welcome to the 24th episode of the Nightblade Epic Podcast. Before we start the show, we've got a couple of quick announcements. First, we wanted to remind you that the Bloodlust audiobook is available on Audible, iTunes, and pretty much everywhere else that audiobooks are sold. Have you ever had a best friend? Have you ever been so close that you constantly joke and make fun of each other even though you die for them at the drop of a hat? Have you and your best friend ever gone on an epic quest for revenge to hunt monsters in the darkest caves across the kingdoms? Well, maybe that last one is a little less relatable, but if you love stories of best friends having adventures, you're going to love Bloodlust. It's one of Garrett's top Underrealm books and definitely his favorite audiobooks so far. So go pick up your audiobook copy of Bloodlust on audible.com or wherever you buy your audiobooks. After this, there's only 2 more episodes in this season of the Nightblade Epic Podcast. Garrett's been working really hard on the special surprise we have for you during the break before the next season begins. Hope you're excited. Okay, now it's time for today's episode. Today you're getting chapters 37 and 38 of Nightblade. When we left off, the merchant Damaris had trapped Lauren in a jail cell with a deadly viper and no hope of escape. Enjoy!
Nightblade, Chapter 37. Lauren cried out and leaped to her feet. The snake's head snapped to the movement. It reared up, 2 handbreadths of its length rising from the floor, and swayed back and forth as it studied her. "Stop, Damaris!" cried Lauren. "I will tell you everything." "Do so then," said Damaris, "and quickly. The serpent, I fear, is impatient." The snake edged closer. A thin, milky film of skin passed across its eyes and then retreated. "Annis hides in the Paupers District," said Lauren, the words rushing forth. "She poses as a beggar, wrapped in leper's rags. She waits for me to find her so that we might escape the city." "While you searched for your dagger, I suppose?" Damaris's mouth twisted in amusement. "A risky endeavor, one might say foolish." "She said the same." Lauren shoved her boots against the wooden wall and edged towards the cell's corner. It only bought her half a pace, and the snake edged closer at her motion. "And I see now I should have listened, but it is the truth, I swear it." "That is where we saw her," said Damaris, "but the Paupers District is large. You must be more specific, girl. Accuracy in all things." Lauren thought quickly. She must give them something, anything to earn more time. "There is a tavern, the Princess Pig. She waits in the alleys around it." "How long will she wait?" said Damaris. "As long as she must. She said she would remain until I returned." Damaris turned to the guard beside her. "Very well. We must go there at once and find her before she thinks to vanish again. My daughter is wise and will know the foolishness of waiting for too long." With a whirl of her skirts, she turned to go. "Wait!" cried Lauren. "The snake!" Damaris turned back, eyes frigid above a smirk. "Ah, yes, my pet. But I have many to replace it and will account it no great loss. And besides, my doomed dear, how did you think I would even recall it? Can you speak with a serpent's tongue?" She stalked to the doorway and left, her guard close on her heels. Lauren screamed for help. None came, and the sound only made the snake rear up again, flicking its tongue out at her. In the cells to either side, Auntie's children studied Lauren with terrified eyes, all of them edging as far away from her cell as they could. Lauren remembered her dagger, and in a flash the blade leaped into her hand. She brandished the weapon at the snake, now scarcely more than a pace away. She might as well have thrust it into the face of a river for all the notice she earned. She could try to stab it, but if she missed, it would strike her for certain. There was nothing to stand on except the chamber pot, and the rim was still within reach of the viper's fangs. If only she had a table, that would be something. Her eyes found the bars of her window high on the wall. Reaching them would mean passing closer to the snake, but her options seemed limited. Ever so slowly, she edged along the wall. The snake turned its head to follow, but it did not advance. Its tongue licked out, smelling the air, and its spiny ridges shifted. Lauren took another step, and another. Only 2 more paces now. She sensed the snake's motion before it struck, and leaped high. Its teeth missed her by a hair's breadth, and she jumped into the air to seize the bars of the window. Quickly she scrambled up, pulling herself to curl in a ball against the wood. In a moment she hung a pace and a half from the ground, her boots planted against the wood while she held the rest of her body still higher. The snake coiled beneath her. Its head rose into the air, mouth open, a thin hiss issuing from its throat. It stretched and snapped, but came short each time. Lauren's arms burned with the effort of holding herself up, her body so tense she could feel her legs beginning to cramp. But at least she was safe. No power under the sky would bring her down from the window, not even her exhaustion. The guards must come eventually, if for no other reason than to give the prisoners food and water. She would hang from the window as long as she must. The snake coiled upon the floor again, milky film blinking across its eyes. Lauren watched it, wondering if she might drop her dagger point first upon its head. Then, in the next cell, a child's foot shifted across the floorboards. The serpent's head snapped to the right. "No!" cried Lauren. "Here! Up here!" The snake ignored her. Slowly it uncoiled, its head sliding across the wood towards the bars at the side of her cage, the rest of its body slithering after. The children cowered in fear, and with every movement of their feet upon the floor, the viper seemed to move faster. "Stop!" said Lauren. "Stop moving! It can feel you!" The children did not take their eyes from the snake, nor did they stop pushing themselves back, trying without hope to slip back through the bars and into the next cell. The snake was only a pace away from leaving Lauren's cell. Lauren swallowed hard and then dropped from the window, drawing her dagger as she thudded to the floor. The serpent stopped, head snapping back towards her. With a cry, Lauren leaped at it, swiping madly in a wide arc with her dagger. Its head darted back, the blade missing by fingers. Fangs closed on the empty space where Lauren's hand had been. She fell back a step, and the serpent snapped again. She swung the dagger madly back and forth, too afraid to get within striking distance, but desperate to kill the thing. One more step she took, and the viper paused. It settled back down, only the end of its neck still suspended in the air. Then its head pivoted again to the children in the next cell. Silent and swift as wind whispering through tree branches, it spun and darted for the bars. Lauren cried out and leaped. Her dagger plunged into its body, impaling it to the wooden floor. The viper writhed in agony, but in its flailing the head whipped around and the mouth shot open. Fangs sank into the flesh between Lauren's thumb and forefinger, and she felt a burning as venom seeped into her blood. She screamed, withdrew the dagger, and stabbed again. The blade pierced the serpent's head. Its tail spasmed, milky film blinked across its eyes a final time, and then it fell still. Nightblade, Chapter 38. The burning in Lauren's hand spread slowly, more slowly than she feared, and yet far more quickly than she wished. She screamed for the guards again, but no help came. With the serpent dead, the children sat, silent and still, staring at her. Surrounded again, and yet alone as ever, thought Lauren. She got to her feet and felt herself sway upon them. The poison, it had to be working upon her already. She silently thanked the stars that Damaris had left. Were the merchants still here, Lauren would no doubt tell her where Annis and Zane waited beyond the walls of the city. Not that it mattered now, not to Lauren at any rate. Here in this cell she would die, victim of a serpent's bite. Mayhap a fitting end for a great thief who built her home in the shadows. But she was not a great thief. Not yet. Nightblade would be nothing but a dream in her mind, extinguished along with her life. The idea held no justice. But then, none of this did, nor had Lauren's life ever done so. Justice would not have given her to hateful parents in a tiny village, nor would it have seen her beaten almost every day of her life. Justice would not have offered her an escape from that life, only to hound her with constables, ruthless merchants, and a mad weremage, all hungry for her blood. Justice, Lauren saw now, did not come of its own accord. It found the weak only when the strong deigned to allow it. Her thoughts grew hazy. She went to the bars of her cell and shook them. They did not budge in their iron fittings, and the burning in her blood grew worse. She retreated to the corner of her cell and sank onto her pallet, eyes fixed upon the cream-colored serpent that lay dead on the floor, her blood still staining its fangs. Shadows surrounded her in the crook between wall and floor, and Lauren thought of Menet in the burning house. He had knelt and prayed to the shadows, and they had come for him. They had wrapped him up, taking him for their own. Mayhap they would do the same for Lauren now. She rose to her knees, placing her forehead to the floor and splaying her hands out before her. The floor stank, but she ignored it. "Shadows that wreath the world in darkness," thought Lauren, "I beseech you, hear my plea. Save your daughter. Rescue me from prison and poison. Save me that I might serve you all the rest of my days." Nothing happened. Lauren repeated the prayer, and then again, but the burning climbed to her elbow, and the words came more and more difficult to her mind, and all the while dust motes danced in the beams of sun through the window. "Shadows that wreathe the world in darkness, I beseech you, hear me and save me. Your daughter—" Lauren stopped, realizing she had said the words out loud. All throughout the jail, the children stared at her. Even the older boys fixed her with looks of incredulity. "Save your daughter," thought Lauren. "Save me, Father. No, Father never saved me. He only hurt me. Why would I want his help? I do not want his help. I ask only the shadows for succor." She seemed to be talking to herself, and it occurred to Lauren that she might be going mad. Had Menet ever gone mad? She did not recall that story, only that he prayed to the shadows. And what? She knew another tale. No, she knew 1,000 tales of Menet, every word about the thief that Bracken had ever divulged after her relentless hounding, but she always wanted more. Why was she thinking of Bracken's stories? For Menet. Menet had many tales, and Lauren knew them all. But why did she think they mattered? The shadow story did not matter. She had prayed. The shadows had ignored her. Why would she keep thinking of them? No, not the shadow story. Another. One she told Annis by firelight, in the darkness upon the road. She straightened from the floor and looked again at the bars of her window. Slowly she pushed herself to her feet, reaching up to clutch the bars. She shook them, but they did not move. Lauren looked down at her tunic. Idly, her mind wandering, her fingers found and played with its fabric. So rough, so coarse. She had not taken it off in days, not since she left the birchwood. It stank. She shook her head and forced her thoughts to clarity. The fabric was rough and too lightly woven. It would not do. She pulled at the cloak that still hung around her shoulders. Damaris's gift. Thick like velvet and strong. It hardly stretched as she pulled at it. It would serve, or she hoped it would. Lauren removed the cloak. Almost she reached up and tied it around the bars, but then she stopped. Not cloth alone. There had been another part to the story, the part she had withheld from Annis. Menet had asked the Wizard King for water and had used it to wet the cloth. That had lent the fabric strength, letting it conquer iron. Lauren looked towards the front of the jail, to the thick wooden door that led out. The guards had ignored her cries before. She would not get water from them. The chamber pot held only a thick sludge that made her retch. She backed away quickly, hand over her mouth. Her heel struck the head of the dead snake, and its body twitched. She dropped the cloak on the floor against the wall, and then undid the drawstring of her pants and squatted. At first she feared she would not have enough, but finally her urine soaked the fabric in a thick stream. All around her she saw that the children had some level of decency. Their eyes had left her as she did her business. Lauren stood and retied her pants, nearly vomiting as she rolled the cloak into a short rope. But soon it was done, and she stretched up. Without too much trouble, she tied the cloak around the middle of the window's center bars. She pulled the knot, but not too tight. She would need some slack for what came next. Her boots had wooden soles. Lauren removed one. The sole she stuck through the cloth and then gave it a half twist. The cloth wrapped tight around the boot, crushing the leather against it. She turned again. The cloth tightened further, and she felt it stretch. "Do not break," she prayed. "Please do not break." Again and again she turned. With every movement her head spun harder. She could not keep her feet and soon was hanging from the wooden sole, letting it support some of her weight, but she did not stop turning. She heard the cranky, groaning noise of iron bending. Lauren looked up to see the cloth had done its job. The bars bent in towards each other. To their left now showed a small gap, one she might slip through. She withdrew her boot, slipping it back onto her bare foot before painstakingly untying the cloak. For a moment she had thought that she might leave it, but she could not bring herself to do so. It was too fine a gift, even now stretched and reeking of piss. She glanced over her shoulder one final time and found nearly every eye in the jail upon her. Silent they watched, the children and the boy fighters, and among the older children she saw no more hatred. Instead, they showed only awe. "No cell may hold Nightblade," she said. Her voice came weak and cracked. Lauren leaped and grabbed the iron bars, hauling herself up. Her head was a tight fit, but it slipped through, and as her hair blew in open air, she knew she would be free. One arm came through at a time, and then she hung suspended against the outside of the building. Below lay the alley behind the jail. No constables patrolled the cobblestones. She was only 3 paces up, an easy drop, so she hung as low as she could and let go. The cobblestones came hard and fast, and Lauren tumbled prone upon them. The street felt deliciously cool against her face, and she let herself enjoy it for a moment. Almost she felt herself drifting off, until she remembered where she was. Then she leaped to her feet, head spinning mightily from the effort, and fled down the alley, into the darkness and the shadow that had turned a blind eye to her prayers.
This has been a production of Legacy Books, written and narrated by Garrett Robinson. The music in this podcast was created by Will Musser. Check out his incredible work at willmusser.com. That's WILLMUSSER.com. Today's letter is I. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.